Hello everybody, Beyond Rogue here. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm back in the world of MineZ with another dungeon tutorial, and today we're going to be taking on the Warped Ruins. So, as you can see, I've got my inventory up here. It's kind of a mess because, well, further my point, you don't want to bring a whole lot of gear into this dungeon, and I'll explain why later. But one thing you're going to need, non-negotiable, is a bow. I have two just in case I throw my soulbound one out. And I'd say 2 stacks of arrows for good measure just to be safe. You only really need about 1, but 2 just in case you're a bad shot. And then a couple of health pots. You don't need them, but they might come in handy if you take some fall damage. So, yeah. So anyway, its coordinates in the top left corner of the screen. Your x is going to be -2500, your z is going to be about -2175. And the first thing you're going to want to do is get into this tower here. So there's no clear-cut way in. You can actually grapple, so if that's something you want to do, you can on the outside of the dungeon. There's no shroud. On the inside there is. There's a couple of ways to go around the tower and parkour, but it's not really a tricky thing. So that's just the way I do it. And you want to drop down into that end portal down there. These signs just tell you you can't grapple inside, you can't hop the loot room, I don't believe, and yeah, you can't hop the loot room, and that you need a bow and arrow. So, you drop down into the end portal. Terrible audio, I know. Refill your water now, just for good measure, because this dungeon, it only takes about 5-10 minutes, but still, you never know. So this first room I'm just going to do, and I'll explain as I go. So you do that, you got some move and jumps here. We're going to go over here. That was lucky. As you can see, that one, the middle row there, it doesn't go all the way to the end. These two, the first and the last platform, actually move all the way to the edge of the hall. That one in the middle does not. It leaves a 1-block gap. So that's something worth noting. But really, that furthers a point I was going to make earlier. If you have bad ping, you don't want to do this dungeon because that part will be impossible for you. And I don't mean that as an exaggeration. It can be quite literally impossible if you have bad ping. That button up there, if you shoot it, it teleports you to a room with some dungeon loot chests, and they're pretty good. But I wouldn't recommend doing those because the loot is about on par with what's in the loot room, and there's no shroud in this dungeon, so you actually have to make it to the loot room to enjoy that loot, so really it's kind of redundant to do that. So this room, you've got some void parkour that is timed, and you don't want to fail this parkour because, again, it's void parkour. And so I'm going to show you guys how I do it personally. At this jump, I actually take a second there to make sure my timing is okay, because the one up against the wall there, it's very easy to miss if you rush into it, because you can jump early, and that's bad. So, and you actually have about a half a second there to just get used to it and set up for the next jump. So that's what I usually do. Other than that, most of the other jumps aren't too bad. And there's another button right there, so both of them teleport you to different loot rooms that are small. And again, I wouldn't recommend them because you still have to do the rest of the dungeon anyway, so that's cool. So, this next room is a void maze. There's a couple of people who have made maps about it in the past, or like little keys to explain how to do it. To me, they don't make a whole lot of sense. I can understand if you're the person who made it, it can help you, but really, to me, they don't. So what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to do it sort of slowly, and you guys can follow along with the video if you want when you do this dungeon and watch, because to me that just makes a little bit more sense to do it that way. And I'll have the coordinates up on the screen too with the direction if that helps you out any. So yeah, you start by pressing this button, and it teleports you onto a 1x1 block actually, and you press this button to the north, and then press this button over here. You can jump over if you want, but why do a parkour jump if you don't have to? Here you actually have to do a parkour jump, so you do one of these. You actually have to do 3 parkour jumps, which is kind of the worst, but that's okay. So you get there, And then this one you actually have to do a corner parkour jump. That's the worst thing about this, is that you do still have to do some parkour in this room, unfortunately. But that's okay. And you parkour over here and you press that button. This one you have to do another parkour jump for. This one you can momentum. It looks like you'll take fall damage from doing that, but you don't. You can press that button, and then you go over here. It's easier if you jump to this wall and then just shift around, because that way you don't have to do a bunch of corner jumps, because why would you want to do that? And then you get here, and this is actually the last button you have to press. It's kind of outside of the box. You see you have all these options, and instead you just go down here to this button under the island, and you're good to go. So I'm going to turn coordinates off. That gold pressure plate there TPs you to the boss room. This jump is kind of tough. I liken it to the jump at the beginning of the Animos boss room, which is 4 block 1 down, I believe. I'm not mistaken. Either way, it's a lot of pressure because it's over void, but you can momentum it. I would recommend, if you're bad at parkour, well, for one, probably steering clear of this place because, again, there's a lot of it. But if need be, bringing a sugar for that jump, it's an option. At that point, you don't exactly have to momentum it, but, you know, whatever. So this gold pressure plate, stand on it, teleports you to the boss room. So, alright, so for this footage of the boss room, I'm actually doing a voiceover because it's hard to record this part and talk while doing this part. So what I recommend doing is going to this middle platform. As you can see here, this boss room is going to have some moving platforms you're going to have to work with, which can be kind of frustrating. So it might take a couple tries before you do get it down. I know for me personally, it took a while to get it right. But what I'd recommend doing is shooting the button over there, because it is a wooden button, because otherwise you're going to have to do some parkour after you press the button to get into the middle set of platforms, like where I'm at right now. So as you can see, I'm not doing so great of a shot in this footage. It might take you a while to figure out the exact distance between the button and you there, but as you can see, I finally got it after a while. And the platform starts moving, I guess you consider it clockwise, probably. But it starts by going south, so do be prepared for that. And then on the south and north sides of the room, there's actually 2 little hallways, and to get to them, you have to shoot those 2 wooden buttons you see there, which will let that platform appear. And then once you're here, you've got to be careful because those are void holes there. You can't land in those, otherwise you'll die. Then you have to take a junk item and throw it in the hole, as you can see. And there's another one on the opposite side, as I kind of mentioned earlier. And this is probably the hardest part right here, is getting back, as I like to call it, back up to pace, because you have to completely start over, essentially. You have to get back into the middle set of platforms and then get used to doing that all over again. So that's fun. And if you do, for whatever reason, happen to miss your shots, so in essence you don't get the platform to appear, it's fine. Just let the cycle keep going. After a while, the cycle will stop, and you don't want that to happen, but you can afford to mess up once or twice and still be okay. So ultimately, it's better to just keep going at that point if something like that happens than it is to try to jump for the platform if it hasn't appeared because you missed an arrow or something. So again, you parkour into this room. Again, void holes, don't fall in those because that would be bad. Throw a junk item. That was a soulbound arrow, so it didn't work. And then the platform will reappear. And obviously, these platforms don't stay around forever. They do disappear once the arrows despawn, and they reappear once you throw an item on the plate. And this one's slightly more difficult to get back onto because you have to do more diagonal jumps. At least to me, it seems more difficult to do on that set of platforms than it's to do on the opposite side. But then from there, as you can see, on the west side is where the loot room actually opens. There's a small little chamber there. So you want to get over to the west side. Don't go to the east side and parkour over there because that's where you start from, and it's really a pain to do. There's just no point in going over there again because you don't have to. So as you can see, there is a zombie in the hallway there, and you want to take that out before you get there, because if you jump over there, the zombie can hit you off and you'll probably die. So you can either bow it, or you could be smarter. I didn't think to do it in the scenario here, but you could just get to that platform there. One that appeared there, that platform that's not moving, and then you could just hit it from there. You could always do that as well. But, you know, whatever floats your boat. And then once you get over here, you've actually beaten the dungeon. You press that button, and as you can see, your legendary will spawn on that side of the room. You've got your Night Shadow, and you've got some really nice dungeon chests. By the way, you might have noticed that there was some end portal there. that I stepped over on my way to the loot room. It doesn't lead you into the void, it's actually covered by a barrier block, but if you're paranoid like I am, you might not want to step on it anyway, just for peace of mind. And as you can see, this dungeon does give you some really nice loot. You can get some good iron and power tubos and all that good stuff if you do this dungeon. So once you get the hang of it, it actually can be a not bad way of gearing, but it's very risky, so obviously don't count on it as a gearing spot, because, well, it's not the most reliable, because you can always get no cheated and whatnot as well. So these are just things to keep in mind, but I did get some pretty close to full Dura iron there, and then down there's actually some chests. And they're better dungeon chests from my understanding, but they require you to do void parkour to get some of them, so I would advise not doing those, just because why would you risk it, you know? So don't do those, that's stupid. And then if you stay on that pressure plate, it teleports you out of the dungeon, and actually on top of the tower, which is the biggest pain in the butt ever, because you have to drop down. So at this point, you can do a couple different things. You could either land on that stone brick platform like I did, which is what I'd recommend doing, or you could go through some glass panes. But that's about it for this video. Thank you to everybody who watched. Hopefully you enjoyed. If so, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.